Alright, so today I want to show you what I consider to be some of the most surprising and unexpected combinations in ball pythons. A lot of times when you're actually mixing some genes together, you'll actually see the influence of both of those genes or multiple genes in the combination. A lot of times the expected appearance is based on what you would kind of expect to see with the genes that you're using, but every now and then you'll actually combine one or more genes together to make some really amazing results that don't look anything like the original genes. And today I want to jump over the internet and I want to show you some of these amazing combinations that are really pretty surprising when you're mixing certain genes together in ball pythons. Alright, so I want to jump over here on Morphmarket.com and I want to start with this snake right here. This is the ivory, and it's kind of interesting. I'd say most of the white snakes are pretty unexpected by themselves. You can actually make a white snake several different ways. I think there's like over 40 different ways to make an all-white ball python. This one happens to be the super yellow belly with two copies of the yellow belly, and the yellow belly looks pretty much like a normal ball python. You can also make an all-white snake with the super fire, the super sulfur. You can make it with any of the blue-eyed leucistic combinations. There's a lot of different ways to make an all-white snake. But one of the interesting things that I found really surprising, especially with the ivory, is when you work in leopard. And when usually in most of your white snakes, a lot of times when you work other genes into the white snake will completely mask all the other genes. And if you actually take a look at this one, this is kind of interesting. This one's actually listed as a pastel ivory possible pinstripe. So you know the pinstripe is really visually dominant. A lot of times you work pinstripe into combinations and you have a really strong influence from the pinstripe. You can definitely see it's in there. And the white snake is so dominating in most cases, it completely masks all the other genes. And there's really only one gene that'll really break a pattern through the yellow belly, the super yellow belly, the ivory, and that is the leopard. And the leopard looks like this. It's kind of interesting. The leopard, it's not really visually dominant as far as working it into other combinations, so you wouldn't really expect that it would actually break through the ivory. It's a pretty unexpected combination. And essentially what the leopard does, the leopard is a dark gene, so you work the leopard into a lot of combinations and it can really darken the background. You see in this one, the blacks are really super black. It's really darkens the background in a lot of combinations. And the leopard will also jumble up the pattern. A lot of times you'll see some streaking. It's actually a dark gene and a pattern enhancing mutation, especially if you work it into other pattern enhancing mutations like the pastel or the spot nose. You can really make some really crazy patterns with the leopard. And here's what happens if you work the leopard into the ivory. Take a look at this. This is pretty amazing that this is actually an ivory. When I first discovered this, it completely blew me away. Could you imagine actually working with ivory and then just randomly breeding a leopard into your ivory and then popping out something like this? And you're like, what in the world just happened to my super yellow belly? And it's pretty amazing. If you actually add leopards to the ivory, not only can you see the leopard, but you can also see the other genes underneath the leopard that the leopard pulls through the super yellow belly out of the white snake, which is pretty amazing. In this case, you're actually pulling out the pastel. So the pastel is working with the leopard to bring out a lot of the yellow. Normally, if you just have a pastel in your ivory, you can't see it all, but the leopard is really bringing it out with the pattern of the leopard. And the other thing that I've actually found with the ivory, to a lesser degree, the enchi will also pull out a little bit of pattern. In some cases, I'd say it's pretty much just the leopard that is really able to pull out a lot of pattern out of the super yellow belly, which is pretty amazing. So here's another combination that I find really surprising. As a matter of fact, if I actually handed you this combination, you probably couldn't tell me what genes were in the mix unless you actually have seen the snake before and you're familiar with it. And this is the champagne. It's one component of the combination, and the champagne can be pretty challenging. It's a really visually dominant gene. A lot of times when we work other genes into the champagne is, I'd say, as far as the dominant visual appearance of the champagne, a lot of times it'll completely wipe out the pattern of all of your other jeans. And a lot of times you'll end up with a completely patternless snake that is a slightly different color. As a matter of fact, if you're actually looking for a completely patternless ball python, you can work other jeans into the champagne. You can make like a pink patternless snake or a yellow patternless snake or a black patternless, depending on what jeans you work in with the champagne. But if you actually want to add some, some pattern and color and make some really unexpected combinations, the champagne can really make some crazy combinations that are totally unexpected. And one of those, you can actually take the champagne and work it in with the super cinnamon. And this is what the super cinnamon is. And this is kind of an interesting effect because the super cinnamon is a completely black, sometimes like a brownish snake with no pattern. So you're taking two combinations that have pretty much no pattern at all, and they're really visually dominant. I've seen a lot of people working other jeans into the super cinnamon, and a lot of times the super cinnamon will completely dominate the other jeans. And here's the really weird thing: if you actually take the champagne, work in the super cinnamon, this is what you get. You get a gray matter. This is kind of crazy. And the first time I saw this, I thought for sure this was a pied, because the pied is recessive, and a lot of times actually the pied will bring out these big splotches of white in your ball python, and it's some weird anomaly between the champagne and the super cinnamon that makes it look like a pied. And if you actually look at the colored part of the pied, you'll actually see in pretty much all of your gray matters, it's like a silver metallic color. It's almost like a silver looking pied, which is kind of crazy. You would never expect that there would be champagne and super cinnamon in this combination. That is totally unexpected. So here's another interesting combination. When I first discovered this, it kind of blew me away. And that is the combination of the yellow belly and the asphalt. And the yellow belly and the asphalt both look pretty much like a normal ball python. As a matter of fact, if you handed me the snake, I would say, yep, that looks like a pretty good looking normal right there with no jeans in it. And the yellow belly can be a really subtle gene. A lot of times sometimes you can pick out some markers. Sometimes you'll see some flaming coming up between the patterns on the side of the snake. Sometimes you'll actually see a little lighter of a color on the head, and usually on your yellow bellies, if you actually flip them over and look at the belly pattern, you can usually figure it out from the pattern on the belly. It almost has like pixelation or a little checkering on either side of the belly. And if you actually take the yellow belly and mix it with the asphalt, it's kind of interesting because both of these look pretty much like normal ball pythons. This one's an asphalt or a yellow belly, so in some cases you can't tell the difference really between an asphalt and a yellow belly. But if you actually take those two genes and you breed them together, this is what you get. You get a freeway. So it's pretty amazing. You start with two normal looking snakes and you end up with something like this. And if you actually work other genes into the freeway, you can make some of the most stunning combinations in all of ball pythons. It's pretty amazing. So if you actually take a freeway and you breed it to a normal, half the offspring come out as yellow belly, half come out as asphalt, and you can't tell the difference between the yellow belly and the asphalt, and that's where it gets a little bit complicated. So here's the last one I want to show you, and that is the clown. And when it comes to clowns, if you first look at a clown, it's actually a recessive gene. You need two copies of the clown for visual. And when I first looked at, I was buying projects early on in my career, I was looking pretty much at two genes, the clowns and the pieds. And everyone said those are the two hottest genes. And I was looking at the pieds with the big splotches of white through the stick. I thought they were really super impressive. And then you look at the clown and you're like, why are people crazy over the clown? Because the pieds are so much more impressive. But the clown, let me tell you, it is definitely the king of combinations. You work other genes into the clown and you can get some of the most crazy combinations as far as the visual appearance. And one of the genes that I found really interesting that works really well with the clown is the super pastel. It's pretty surprising. And this is what a super pastel looks like. And if you actually take one copy of the pastel or two copies in the super pastel, it has a really strong influence as far as changing the visual appearance of the clown and giving you a really unexpected visual appearance. So here's what happens if you take the super pastel and you work it into the clown. Take a look at this. This is one of the most amazing combinations that I would definitely not expect breeding those two together. And I was wondering, the first people that were working with these genes and breeding them together, I bet they were just blown away at some of the combinations. They're probably scratching their heads on some of these. They're probably thinking, do I have a new gene, or is that just just the combination of the super pastel and the clown. Pretty amazing. Alright, so it is time for the question of the day. And Jay Anderson asks, how did we come up with all these genes and ball pythons with the normal being the original gene? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I've had a lot of similar questions all week. It seems like this week people have been asking some interesting questions. One person asked, hey, how do we actually make a ball python gene? And I was actually on a phone conversation with one of my old friends this week, and he asked me, he's like, hey, how's the gene splicing come along in ball pythons? So let me tell you, here in my reptile room, I am not splicing genes. It's not a scientific laboratory. We're not making new genes. Essentially what we're doing is we're taking a male ball python that contains some genes, breeding it to a female ball python that contains other genes, and the offspring pretty much have a mix and a combination of all those genes. So you might ask, hey, where did all these genes come from? And that is a very interesting question. A lot of these genes came from the wild, believe it or not, over in West Africa. I've actually seen, stories of people finding just random snakes in the wild, like the spider ball python came from the wild. Can you imagine just walking around over in West Africa and seeing a spider ball python crawling on the ground, or the coral glow and the banana? Both of those were found in the wild. Sometimes I've actually seen people spontaneously create new mutations, breeding random snakes together in their collection. I've actually seen it. As a matter of fact, I think it was the static gene where someone was breeding two ball pythons together and popped out this crazy looking snake. Turns out it was the static gene, just kind of popped out of thin air, just some random genetic mutation that came from the breeding of two snakes. And they actually took that gene in that snake, they bred it to something else. Half the offspring came out with a similar appearance to the parents, knowing from that it is actually a genetic mutation. It's kind of interesting how some of these were created. So it's really easy. It's not really rocket science. We're just breeding snakes together. No chemistry required. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.